How we doing, Decentraland community? How we doing here to talk about our latest DAO grant, the DAO-Owned Catalyst Archival node. We're really proud about this one, so I'll take a few minutes to walk through why we did this, how to use it, and how you can be a part of this initiative going forward. So first, I'll talk a little bit about why we kind of decided to do this initiative and why we and some of our supporters thought this was important to do. So first of all, we wanted to create a Catalyst node, a place where you can pull data from that was not also being actively used to play Decentraland on. There's always a concern about the bandwidth and the sort of load that each of the nodes can experience. And so we wanted to make sure that builders could rest assured and they could use APIs with data to get, images from the Catalyst or content or anything that is needed to build apps or decentralized apps against it without affecting the quality of play of the node itself. So that node is up and available. The other reason is to create a new set of APIs that are a little bit more fit for purpose when reporting and creating kind of applications that show data or kind of dive deeper into the data, as opposed to data that the Decentraland protocol itself needs to render the game and kind of make all of the core applications work. But most importantly, we wanted to make sure that we persisted and have a backup of some of the earliest data that we could get our hands on in Decentraland. So thank you to everyone who contributed. Special shout out to HP, who was able to provide us with the data source. So now it's at least hosted one other redundant place, and so hopefully it can live on beyond any one individual. As this was a platform contribution initiative, all of the code that we are talking about today is open source. It could be found at this URL, and I'm sure I'll leave that behind for people to explore and play with. Just a quick overview of the repo in case you do plan on playing with this. There's kind of 4 microservices that, for simplicity, we're stitching together using Docker Compose. So we have an API microservice, and that's the kind of externally facing content that we'll look at in just a minute. But that's what most people are going to actually utilize as part of this project. We have a backup microservice, which is really meant to take data out of the SQL database that's part of a Catalyst node and make sure that gets backed up. And we're using Amazon Web Services for our backup, their S3 service. So that kind of dumps the database, creates that backup so you can restore from where we left off. There's a sync service, which for some of the content, it's not really effective to push all of that up all at once on a periodic basis, as it is several terabytes. So the sync microservice is intended to run listening to your content folder, and anytime there's a new file, and by definition the new file will have a new name because all the files are named after their hashes, that will get up to the backup so that we can persist that too. And then there's a cron microservice, which kind of just orchestrates for some of the backups, some of the derived data. They need to be run daily or weekly, and so that kind of just nudges them on to make sure that everything's up to date. And so you can view this today. There's instructions, just like our last grant. We use Redoc to display all the different API calls that we've categorized, by whether it's derived data, information about profiles, scenes, or developer tools. You can download a Postman collection and be able to use all of these with kind of samples right out of the box. And we've got all of the data currently being archived. You can see we've got some of the content dumps. These are the SQL backups of the table that governs all of the information needed to point you to both current and historical data. And you can see it's kind of quite a lot of data. It grows over time, and we're going to be persisting this at least for the next year, just to make sure that, it exists and the history of Decentraland is not lost. And just in the limited time, I can walk through some of the calls. We've got stuff on profiles, so you can see profile history instead of just getting a current or having to, do some kind of lookup to figure out which piece of information you need. You can query a single profile. This happens to be my address, and you'll get a list of all of the times that profile has been updated. We could do the same for scenes, so you can see a whole scene history of any time that scene was updated through time. There's a record, and so you can get the entire list of that. And if you wanted to sort of dive in and recreate the content, you can actually download this content hash from any Catalyst node that has this data, and you should be able to get those files. Going forward, there's some more interesting use cases that were posited in the DAO more recently. So one, someone was asking on, a ranking of how many times profiles have been updated. So we were able to produce this data, where we can kind of count the most frequently updated parcels. Might be interesting to someone building some kind of visualization against that. And then we have kind of a deployments per day heat map, which we thought was interesting to be able to support, how many times the entire community updated, when are updates done more frequently than others. So if you wanted to, you can create like a GitLab kind of heat map around this. Anyway, this is just a very small subset of some of the examples. I only have a limited time to talk to you today, so if there's any questions, obviously Atlas can always be reached in our Discord, in either the Decentraland Discord or the Decentraland DAO Discord. We are hoping that people will deploy this themselves so that we are not the only stewards of this data, and that this data can live on through being housed redundantly by multiple teams. But most importantly, if there's any issues or any feedback or recommendations for other APIs or content that we might house using this API, please reach out. We're always interested in improving the service. And with that, thanks for your time. Hope you guys make good use of the service and enjoy.